But what you said earlier,
Yeah.
before my power went, you mentioned people critiquing City players. I look at it, the only element I'd really critique you for today is the lack of clinical edge in front of goal. But that really and truly, majority of the time came from players who the majority of you are saying you don't even want here next season anyway, or they've passed their best. So I feel like criticizing them again almost becomes a bit, it just becomes a sort of a bashing exercise as opposed to critiquing the team. If you've said, I know Gundogan, I know Bernardo Silva, I know they're past their best, I know they need to go, continuing to go, right, I need you to rip into them again for their lack of finishing today, I feel it's a bit futile of a thing to ask, if that makes sense.
Exactly. That's my point. Like, how many times are you going to say it in a different way that Gundogan doesn't have the legs and he's not looking to be the player that he was before leaving? How many times are you going to tell us that Bernardo Silva looks like he's been ran into the ground and the player that delivered for us with regards to the trouble season and the amount of great moments that he's done, even with regards to playing against Real Madrid, isn't there? Like, I get all that. Pep still has to get some games out of these guys. If there's a game to do it, it's going to be versus Plymouth in this stage of the FA Cup. So let's stop. What's the phrase? Let's stop beating a dead horse. Like, let's take it and move on. And at the same time, let's also see I'm more importantly looking at the pattern of play to seeing whether we're getting it into these threatening positions and hope improved in terms of player quality. We get what we need done. But yeah, sometimes need to complain. This, in my opinion, isn't the game to do it. I already know rivals are going to want to go and, hey, what did Foden do today? Go ahead, do that as well. I think and we move. But hey, we're City. United get the criticism all the time, so will we.
The only thing I was going to ask you, it's not directly related to the match. I read a quote today that Pep Guardiola wants Ilkay Gundogan to sign another extension for another year. Would that be a mistake, in your opinion, to keep him for another season?
I'm trying to understand I'm trying to understand the reason for it. I really do. I know that there's a lot of talk about Gundogan moving on as like for his coaching badges, and he's showing to have a great ability to have that be his next phase of career. But in terms of what he would have to do on the pitch for us, I don't see it. I don't see why we would want another on what he's able to offer, because I think he's only able to offer us that maybe like once a week. I don't think he's playing in terms of that games every 3-day type schedule. And in the important ones, I don't even think he plays either. So I think it's something to have to do with his career beyond being a Manchester City player, and whether that's a player coach that Pep wants to keep close to the club, possibly. But it doesn't make sense to me in turn with regards to playing week or game after game. It does not. I don't know.
Yeah, no, listen, I hear you on that. I'm a bit like you. I want to understand the rationale. Maybe if it's a case of, I understand it. Maybe if he already knows he's losing 3, 4, 5 really experienced players, you might want to keep somebody in and around the dressing room of a certain age and sort of leadership quality. But at the same time, it doesn't look too great. Hamza's here with us.
You know what, Terry?
Go on, mate. Go on.
Yeah, I'll say this one real quick, and shout out to Professor Hamza. Maybe it's also, how you need that leadership, or you need someone in the locker room that's a little bit of the relay, like the voice of the coach and then also the voice of the players to get back and forth. Maybe that's the thinking here, but yeah, I don't know. But thanks for having me on. Appreciate you letting me speak while getting my little girl to ballet. Appreciate it. Take care, guys.
No worries, mate. Take care, bro. Thank you. And he did it the right way, V. I saw him backstage. He parked, called, and then drove. And I thought, fair play to him. Hamza, important win for you tonight. Maybe not the greatest of overall performances, but you got the job done. O'Reilly stepped up with a brace. You're through to the next round. Talk to me, brother.
Absolutely. FA Cup it can be surprising. We've seen what happened to Liverpool. They were beaten by this Plymouth Argyle. Thank God. Stopped them winning the treble. So Plymouth Argyle did us all a favor, me and you, Terry, man. We're the only football club that's got a treble.
Yep,
you can't get it now. And to me, they came in there. They were brave. I think I have to give credit to Plymouth Argyle. I think they played very well. They came there with a tactic. Okay, fair enough. They only had one shot on target. The whole game we had 29 shots off target, and they had one. But they scored the goal, and they were very good. They had a very good defensive line. They had like 5-4-1, and they played well. And I was impressed by some of their players. To me, I was a bit worried when we went 1-0 down. I said, huh, you can't get knocked out to Plymouth Argyle. It's been a horrible season for us. And big up to some players who dig deep. And Pep Guardiola initially played without false nine, so he played Foden as a false nine. Foden wasn't good today as a false nine, but when he subbed Makati off and played Foden behind that, then he started working out. I think City have to be impressed. Grealish did well, but you expect it from him. You expected KDB to do well. He did well. But Plymouth Argyle were just tough to break. And I was blaming our set piece, how we conceded that goal, because we just concede set pieces so easy. And they had Makati to man mark the tallest player. This zone marking, which I hate from Man City, just doesn't make sense, you know. And they crossed the ball. Makati was marking the tallest player. What a header, 1-0. Come in, City luckily got that header from Nico Riley. I think he was outstanding. Nico Riley is normally a youngster who's a midfielder, but he's played well left back, and I think he's had a commanding lead in the left back. And I think I was really impressed. And he's got 2 goals, 2 headers from Nico Riley. We're seeing why Chelsea are interested. He's got very high ceiling. That's why City refused to sell him. And I think he was brilliant. And the third goal, I think it was just we again had just a run in there, and Haaland crossed it, and De Bruyne scored it. But listen, performance wise, was this the best you could see from City? No, because City were just playing slowly around left, right, and Plymouth Argyle were just comfortable with that. And you know what? We scored two set pieces, 2 set pieces to break them down. Was it a convincing win? No, but luckily we managed to go through. And I think Plymouth Argyle were brilliant today. Absolutely brilliant. And if you can fault them today, I think they were unlucky to have conceded 2 headers from those. And I think City today, was I impressed with the win? Listen, you're right. You said some few things like our play is just slow. The wings are just slow, pass back, come back to midfield, go left, come back midfield, go right, come back to midfield, go left, come back to midfield. It's just, we haven't got that fast attacking players who can punish people.
Mm.
And our wing backs, our left and right backs, don't like don't drive forward. Like they go more into midfield rather than driving forward. So Pep I think, has to change from that style. I think people have realized, listen, you can have the ball as much as you can. We'll park the bus, and it's difficult
Well,
to break.
you've also lost a lot of athleticism, and I watched KDB today. And look, some City fans go, "Oh, we battered them. We had all these shots. We had all these chances." They're a relegation side in the Championship. You should be all over them. But I would look at it more through the lens of when you're up against better footballing teams with more pace, with more power, with superior technical ability compared to Plymouth, how are you going to fare? And even with KDB today, he got in a few times. One of his shots was well saved by Hazard. But what you're seeing from KDB is a player that's lost. If you look at it from a percentage point of view, he's lost 10% power. He's lost 10% speed. And when you come to splitting hairs between you and teams in title races, the best teams in Europe, you're going to come second best with this squad as it is now, which is why that investment in January and then in the summer is going to be so important. You'll beat most of these teams. You'll still, with this squad, finish inside the top 4 this season, and you've turned that round. The January's been a good window for you, and you'll get it done because the technical ability is still so high. But I think what's being exposed here is nobody can rest on their laurels when it comes to the physical aspects of the game. And there are lots of boxers, for instance, that get to a certain age and they can they still bob and weave well. They've still got the technique, but do you know what? A bit of that speed goes. A little bit maybe of that power goes, or the timing, not the power, but the timing goes a little bit, and they can't beat the best of the best. And I think that, of course, you won tonight. You look really strong, but you can just see the kind of flaws in your team. The positive thing for a City fan is this, though. You just know in the summer you're going to go out and you're going to address it. And the only thing that can go wrong is that you buy wrong, but you're actually going to go out and spend the money to add that quality, add that athleticism. And I think you'll be back to all guns blazing next year, in my personal opinion, mate.
I think 100%. I think, you know what? Listen, it reminded, I told many City fans, I said, listen, it's like that AC Milan of that aging squad. Remember the Yabstam, the Maldini, the Nesta, Pilo's 30s, Seydov's 30s, Shevchenko's 30s, Crespo's 30s, Inzaghi's 30s. And within a year, you just didn't see them. They're gone. Because what happens when you're 30 something years old, a year makes you much difference, big difference. Look at KDB last year. Impressive. Came back from injury, absolutely brilliant. And then you come back this summer, and either he didn't have a rest, he played straight. He went straight to the Euros as a 33-year-old, start playing the Euros, expected 2 3 weeks off, come back in the summer. I think, we've got a lot of aging squad. You're right. Like Gundogan is 34. I think he's likely to stay. The reason you have to keep him in, listen, we got issues like in terms of 8 homegrown players. So if you're losing players like Kyle Walker, you can't lose Stones. You can't lose Ake because that's 3 homegrown players gone. Then you lose Jack Grealish. That's 4 homegrown players gone. So you can't just lose all those players. So to me, it's a tough decision. I said, like, listen, I heard that he wants to keep Gundogan. I think he's keeping Gundogan for experience, 100%. He has to keep John Stones for experience. I think 100%. I know John Stones and Ake injury prone. We saw John's Ake come back, and Ake's just limped out. I'm sorry. And you know what? We had poor planning, obviously, Terry. There's no doubt about it. The planning we had was poor. I said it to you before. Like the planning of losing Alvarez and not getting a backup starts then affecting players. And then we go in the same squad who are Kyle Walker's 33, 34 years old. You got the same issues you've been having for 2 3 years where Ake and Stones are injured. But luckily, you've been saved because Akanji and Diaz are playing so many games. But guess what, Terry? It then starts affecting them. It has a domino effect because
No, I agree. Mate, I totally agree with you. And it's a team sport. And I'm sorry to interject, but I just want to say I agree because then it impacts people like Phil Foden because Phil Foden's not
facts.
aging, but then suddenly there's 2 or 3 players around him that can't move as quickly, don't pass the ball as
Yep.
quickly. You're a split second off here and there, and you guys were such a finely tuned machine in a few parts, a few cogs have broken, and I think it's had a knock on effect to everybody really. So yeah, this summer's going to be absolutely massive in terms of who you bring in. But maintaining that floor or that ceiling of high quality technical ability, and then adding in that new pace, that new power. I mean, one of your fellow fans in here was talking about Rahman was saying he wants Belieber from Brighton, and that's exactly the type of profile of midfielder. Huge technical ability, great technician, good passer, but an engine for days, has that speed, can battle. I mean, hindsight's lucrative. Caicedo would have been perfect for the way you guys play football because he can go direct and go quickly. He can play in a team that absorbs at times if you're against really good teams. He can also play the possession-based stuff as well, and it's finding that new version of that really, because I know that you've got Rodri coming back. You don't know how anyone's going to be after an injury, and sometimes it takes a while because if you remember, I remember Van Dijk came back, looked really good for 3 or 4 months, and then he went off the boil a little bit. And then it took him a while to get back to his absolute, because you might find that Rodri runs off a bit of adrenaline when he returns, and then aches and pains come in and everything else. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. In relation to that, a few people calling out your second goal, saying that it shouldn't have stood. There was a push. What do you make of that personally?
I think it's one of those tiny little push, but it wasn't like fair enough. I would have felt sorry for Plymouth. I got to have considered that goal fair enough, but I thought it was a little push, and you see that kind of push. For example, I saw when Gabriel Magalhaes when he scored at Etihad, when he scored that goal, he pushed Walker a little bit, and then he went for the header. So sometimes you give, sometimes you don't, but it wasn't that big physical push. So It's quite
I
harsh
agree.
because it's the opponent you're playing. So if you're scoring that kind of goal against Plymouth Argyle, you're like, okay, fair enough.
I agree with you. I don't think it's a penalty. I don't think it's a foul. We've seen in the last couple of weeks the precedent's been set. The push from the Liverpool player in the game against Wolves wasn't given as a foul. The push on Konate wasn't a foul. The pull overturned on Ashley Young. Yes, there was a little pull. But it was never enough for a penalty. And I'm glad they're being consistent with these little pushes and these little pulls. Whether you like the rule or not, I feel like almost becomes irrelevant. Be consistent. What they can't do, though, tomorrow is Man United score a goal from a corner, but then disallow it for a little push. That's when I'll get frustrated. Not because I think it's about keeping it consistent now.
But
so
then
we've got to look for that.
you define a push, see, that it then becomes harder that. Then what is a little push? What is a moderate push? That's when it becomes a big thing. So that's why football's changed for that handball. Is it behind the line? Is it a handball?
I don't think it's hard to tell, right? This example of O'Reilly's, they were face to face. They're both grappling, and he's being held, so he pushes him off of him. No problem with that. I think it's always been praised when defended. The best I've ever seen do it was Gary Neville. Ball comes in high. Gary Neville's the best sometimes especially if he got caught out of position. He would get underneath a fellow defender, and as they jump, he'd jump into them or he'd lean into them a little bit just to put them off their stride. Defenders get praised for it. So why can't attack? So for me, attackers, like the Konate situation, should be able to do the same. When it comes to pulls, I think all pulls that stop a player running should be pens. However, if you start the season off by saying fleeting pulls that last a second or two are not fouls, you can't suddenly change it in the middle of February. So I think they are pretty consistent with those decisions, if I'm being honest. And I think the difference is, if, for instance, the Plymouth players are about to head the ball and O'Reilly, for no reason, just pushes him really hard in the back, then yes, you give a foul for it. So I feel like there's a distinction between those things for me. But I want to ask you a question. You're down as the favourites with the bookies to win the FA Cup. Do you think you're the favourites, Hamza?
Yeah, because obviously you're Manchester City, so you're the team that should be winning the FA Cup 100%. But then you're looking at, thank God we're off after the Champions League. I said it's the best thing to have happened because the number of injuries we would have got. So it's about managing with the squad. Hopefully that we get a favourable draw, push further a bit. You want to avoid the hardcore Newcastle away, Brighton away, Aston Villa away. That makes it a bit more difficult. Or United at home. So you want to get a draw around Etihad. So I prefer to get a draw around Etihad, a favourable draw. But you know what? If we get this season, it ends with a top four, a trophy, I think, and then Arsenal don't win anything and they come second, we've had a way better season than them. We've had a better season than most teams other than Liverpool. So to me, if we get FA Cup plus third or fourth, I think that's a good season that Pep can't be disappointed with.
Yeah, mate. Considering when you won, when you were in that period where you won 1 in 13,
1 in 13,
we end up in the Champions League position and winning an FA Cup. From that point, would be a phenomenal season. I agree. Look, mate, always a pleasure to sit and speak.